My name is M.N.A. Torrance, and I was 34 the winter my grandmother died, and my parents handed me a house they were already sure was worthless the morning after the funeral. My mother read a typed list out loud in her own living room. And next to my name, there was one line, 418 Woodbine Street, a rental with a dead roof, and a furnace older than I am. Everything else had already moved into her name on paper. Months before my grandmother stopped knowing what day it was, less than 3 weeks later, a contractor called me from that house and told me to come right now. And not to bring my mother, I have spent 10 years telling people what their houses are worth. My signature at the bottom of every report, what was behind that wall changed what my own name was worth. And I am the one who ended up paying for it. Before I tell you what happened next, please hit like and subscribe. Drop your city and local time below. I love knowing where you're listening from now. Let me take you back to the last time I saw my grandmother alive, holding my hand with both of hers. Saying something I wrote down, and then forgot for 3 months. My grandmother, Winifred Proser, kept every receipt she'd ever gotten since 1971 in a cookie tin with a lighthouse on the lid. She could not tell you what she had for lunch, but she could tell you which of her houses ate money and which ones behaved. I saw her last in November, glasses fogging in the doorway from the heat turned up too high. Her rings loose on her thin hands, she held my hand with both of hers, which she never did, and said, "There's something in that house nobody would ever look at." I asked which house. She said a name, a year, a road, none of it connecting. Then asked if I'd eaten. I wrote it in my calendar margin, because I write everything down. That's the whole personality if you want it. Early, I believed for most of my life, that made me the honest one. It took a sheet of drywall to teach me the difference between honest and clean. She died on the 9th of January. And my mother had the keys to her house before the cars left the funeral home at the reception, ham and little rolls, and 40 people from church. My mother stood up at 2 o'clock with a typed list and started reading who got what. Nodding along like a bulletin, I sat on the arm of the couch, appraising the room the way I appraise every room. Because the job never turns off, not even here next to my name. One line, 418 Woodbine. My father stood by the sliding door with a plate he wasn't eating from. And he did not look at me for the rest of the afternoon. At the lawyer's office that Thursday, it took 20 minutes to see the shape of it. The brick ranch had gone to my mother by a deed signed in 2022. The accounts were payable on death also to her. The duplex had been inside an LLC since 2011 and was never part of the estate at all. What was left in probate was Woodbine and a mortgage. $29,000 still owed from a cash-out refinance. The only thing I inherited had a negative number attached to it. My mother said, "Well, it's a house, honey. People would kill for a house." My father studied the carpet. I asked about a codicil added in 2019. The only line in the whole document that named me. The lawyer said someone had suggested it at a routine review. She didn't say who. And I didn't think to ask. 2 days later, I was appraising a house across town when the homeowner asked if I really had to write down the water stain on his wall, and I said yes. And I explained it smooth the way I always do, proud of it, because that signature is the only thing I own. My phone buzzed 6 times in an hour, all my mother. She already had a buyer for Woodbine. A company that pays cash, no inspection, nothing for me to think about. Just sign. I said no, and in the back bedroom closet of that house, I found new drywall. Screwed flat and painted a white that didn't match the wall beside it. A ridge under the carpet running the width of the closet, like something had been boxed in. I called the county for the permit history on Woodbine. Nothing, not one permit. Ever then I pulled the tax filings, and they told the opposite story. Repairs claimed nearly every year for 9 years, thousands of dollars. And not one piece of paper to show for any of it. I sat with 2 windows open on my laptop and opened a third. My own appraisal archive chain of title first, clean until June of 2016. A cash-out refinance, signed by my mother as attorney, in fact under a power of attorney. My grandmother had granted her 2 years earlier. The report on that loan carried my signature, my license number. I was 24 and there, on the photo page, was the back bedroom closet. The drywall already there, already painted. Months old, I had appraised that house at $74,000 and never once mentioned what was behind that wall. Because I never looked, I drove to my old mentor Bernadette's sunroom full of dying orchids and let her tell me, without asking why I'd come, about an appraiser who never disclosed a family loan wasn't fraud on paper, but was a disclosure failure all the same. The rule was never about whether you cheated. Only whether anyone could check, she said. The board can't take anything from you that you hand them first 2 days later. At Sunday dinner moved to Monday. I asked my father why there was brand new drywall in that closet. He said he didn't remember. Fast to the gravy boat. And my father has never once in his life answered a question that quickly my mother served the beans and told me a story about an appraiser who once wrote a foundation crack into a report and cost a whole block 4 years of value. Nobody ever got poor writing a number down smaller. She said, they got poor because somebody else did. I sat with that sentence for days before I understood it wasn't advice. It was a confession dressed as a proverb. I hired Gus Pewitt, 61. 2 guys and 1 truck. A man who does not speculate. He knocked on the closet wall and got back a drum where the rest of the house gave back plaster. He measured the closet against the outside wall and said it came up 30 inches short. He asked if my grandmother had ever mentioned work being done back there. I said my grandmother mentioned everything twice. With the receipt, and this was the one thing she never wrote down, he said, I'll open it a week from Monday. If it's dead space, it's an hour and I'll patch it if it's not. Don't be here. He wasn't joking when he said it. That week my mother called again about the buyer. Said none of this had to be hard. Said sign it and let it be somebody else's headache. I said I'll think about it. My younger cousin called that same night. Said she'd overheard my mother on the phone with a lawyer, and it scared her. And hearing that fear in a 20-year-old voice cracked something loose in me. The paperwork never had. I drove out to my grandmother's porch that weekend and sat on her swing and let myself grieve. Not just her, but the version of my family I'd spent 34 years believing in. I wish my mother had been the kind of parent who called to ask how I was, instead of what I was going to do with a house. But wishes don't hold up in a probate court. Whatever my grandmother hid in that wall might 11:50, the night before Gus was due. I sat at my kitchen table with 1 lamp on, going back through every report with my name on it. My hands cold even in a warm room at 12:03, I closed the laptop and sat in the quiet. I am 34, I am a licensed appraiser. And in the morning, a contractor was going to open a wall my mother had spent 9 years paying. On paper, to keep closed across town, I knew my mother was asleep. Certain a cash buyer would have that house sold before anyone thought to look twice. She would find out otherwise in about 12 hours. Gus called at 9:41, his voice wrong. Slow and formal. We found something in the wall, he said, and behind him a radio crackled, and someone answered it. Come now, he said, then, quieter, come alone. Don't bring your mom. I walked 9 blocks in February, and do not remember any of them. Behind the cut-out drywall was a fireproof lockbox. And inside it copies of every falsified repair invoice going back 9 years, alongside a short letter in my grandmother's own hand, addressed to me, saying she'd found the box the year she signed the power of attorney over and hidden it exactly where she knew my mother would never think to look. Inside the one house she was certain nobody would ever renovate. It named every dollar, every fake invoice, every refinance. I handed all of it to Bernadette, and to Porsche the following week. My mother was investigated for elder financial exploitation. The refinances unwound. Restitution ordered against her share of the estate. She has not called me since. My father sends a text most Sundays. Nothing about the money. Just asking if I've eaten. My grandmother used to say houses had appetites. Some of them were polite, and some of them were not. I used to think she only meant the buildings. She meant her own daughter too. My mother lost the properties that mattered to her and most of the family. That still spoke to her. And I don't know that she understands why even now Bernadette still repots her orchids and still tells me the board can't take anything from you that you hand them first. And I believe her more every year. As for me, I kept 418 Woodbine, patched the roof, rented it to a young family. And I still keep every receipt in a tin with a lighthouse on the lid. I think about my grandmother. Every time, I write a number down exactly as small or as large as it actually is. If you've ever found out your family had a philosophy they never said out loud. I want to hear it. Tell me in the comments, and if this story moved you, subscribe to Dad's Revenge Tales. There are more to come.